Greetings, and welcome to the Bowling Green First United Methodist Church. We hope you enjoy what you're about to see, and you can find us at the corner of Broadway and Church Streets at 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, or you can find us online at bgmethodist.org and on Facebook at Bowling Green First United Methodist Church.
And we're back tonight with a live look at the state capitol from our sky camera atop the Citizen Hotel. Kathy, this was supposed to be, I say supposed to be, the view for a beautiful wedding today.
That's right, but after the groom got cold feet, the would-be bride's family was left with the venue, but no wedding. KCR3's Tom Miller shows us how a heartbreaking situation turned into a night they'll never forget.
The tables are set, food hot out the oven, and one by one the guests arrive. These aren't the men, women, and children the Duane family originally planned to host, but they're happy to do it nonetheless.
When I found out on Monday that the wedding would not be taking place, it just seemed like, of course, this would be something that we would do to give back.
Earlier in the week, the would-be groom got cold feet and called off the wedding. Rather than cancel the $35,000 outing, the bride's family invited the city's homeless for a once-in-a-lifetime meal at one of Sacramento's finest hotels.
I think it's very generous, actually, to lose out on something so important to yourself and then give it to someone else is like really giving.
Many came with their families, giving their kids a rare night out.
When you're going through a hard time and struggle, for you to get out to do something different and with your family, you know, is really a blessing.
The food is similar to what you'd find at the hotel's four-star restaurant Grange. There's salad, cauliflower, gnocchi, salmon, even tri-tip.
There's plenty to go around. 120 people were invited to the wedding before it got canceled.
This is not coming out of our kitchen. We love our chef Leo, but he wouldn't be preparing nothing like this.
While full stomachs and smiles are everywhere, the night is still painful for the Duanes. Their 27-year-old daughter chose to stay home.
I feel a lot of heartache and heartbreak for her, but I will take away something really good from this. I will.
Turning a night that was supposed to be about their family into one that takes care of others. In Sacramento, Tom Miller, KCRA 3 News.
What a great way, though, to turn a very bad situation into a positive situation. They were going to be with all this food anyway. It was just going to go in the garbage, so at least now families get a chance to enjoy it.
There we go. But what I love about that, though, is that it kind of gives us a new way of seeing that story. It shows kind of the good parts of what can happen of folks that are enjoying and being a part of that banquet, even if maybe they weren't the intended guests. Now, the challenge, though, with that parable is that there are parts of it that are a little bit harder to understand. And there's one part that we read, and then there's the part that comes after that in verses 10 to 14. There's another section of that is also really hard to understand and hard to figure out. And so we kind of got to figure out what do we do with those hard to understand places. And that's where, oddly enough, the Nigerian prince and other spam comes into play. Now, I've never, using spam as an example on Sunday morning is new for me, but what if you've ever used the internet or you used email or you know what spam is like, and you probably even know the reference that I'm making to the Nigerian prince. The way email spam works, if you don't know what that is someone, the spammer, will send out 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million emails that are all basically identical to this huge email list that he's got. And what happens then is that, and the content of that email is the Nigerian prince who is contacting you because they need help. And if you just do something very simple like either send them money or even better, just directly give them your checking account information, they will deposit lots of money into your account, and you will be set for life. That's the way this scam. Well, you can see the potential problems with that already. And the name spam comes from way back in the day in the mid-90s, and I've said that 3 times this morning now, and then several times yesterday in preparation. It still sounds weird to me, say way back in the day. It's the 90s. But way back in the day, in the mid-90s, when the internet was first getting started, and the early versions of chat rooms, there was a guy who made an innocent mistake one day. He accidentally sent a response like 200 times to everyone that was inside of that chat room. And of course, the internet then, at that point, being filled with nerds most of the time, they were all Monty Python fans, and so they came back to spam. And everything comes back, everything turns into spam, and that's where this name came from. Anytime you send this huge bulk mailing for no purpose or for scamming purposes, now it all is spam. And that's where it comes from. And so that's how we end up with this name of spam. Now you would think that in the intervening 25 years that folks would have figured out that it's spam. That when you get some email that sounds too good to be true, that you can make a lot of money doing no work, that we would have figured that out and that scam wouldn't work anymore, right? Sounds logical that this would be the thing. Well, this is, you aren't going to be able to read that, and that's okay. This is an email that I got that's in my spam folder from the beginning of October. Now there's no Nigerian prince, but they know I'm a pastor because most every bit of spam I get now has some reference somewhere, and like the subject line of this one says, "Hello, my beloved in the Lord." Like, oh, we know you're a pastor. We know how to manipulate pastors, and that's where it goes. But the same thing holds. If I just turn over all of my banking information to them, they will deposit 3.6 million euros into my account, of which I can keep 25% of that. Sounds like a great deal, doesn't it? It would be a great deal if this were for real, but again, it's the same sort of thing. And it works because it plays on a very simple principle of human nature, which is that if we can get a big payoff for not having to do much of anything, we're going to take it. Now, a lot of times that works out well because that's how a lot of innovations happen. Someone says, I don't like having to do this all the time. Oh, look, I can invent something that allows me to, rather than bailing just a few bales of hay at a time, now I can bail 1,000 bales overnight. You know, something happens like big payoff, a little bit of work, you know, and this is a good thing. The problem is that criminals know this too. And so they play on this. They play on our desires to have a big payoff for no work, and that's why this scam still works. Even if they are only able to scam a small fraction of a percent of the people they email, that's still a lot of people that are falling for this. Because we like this idea that we can get something for not much work. It's the same principle, the same sort of spam principle, you could call it, I suppose, is at play in those hard to understand parts of this parable. Because we've got these two parts. On the one hand, we have in verse 7, this is the part where the king sends everyone out to destroy the people that didn't come to the party. My first response in reading that is, well, that escalated quickly. This is, really? They go to a party? This is your reaction to this? The other part comes in the passage that we did read for this morning, and basically a guy shows up, the king sees him and says, you aren't wearing any wedding clothes, off to the dungeons with you, and literally sends him to the dungeons for not having the right clothes on. Again, how do we make sense of these things? We apply that kind of principle. First, we got to understand when a king invites people to a wedding, they aren't folks like you and me. That's not the way this works. They invite the nobility, the aristocracy, the movers and shakers, the people that have got the power in that kingdom are invited to come to that party. And that is because when you move at that level, there are certain expectations that are made of you. And if you are part of the nobility or part of that wealthy elite, you get an invite like that, the expectation is that you go. Or if you can't go, you send one of your representatives. Or if you can't send anyone, you have a really good excuse, and you send a gift that is several times more expensive than what you were originally planning on doing. What happened, though, in the story is that the folks that were invited the first time gave the first century version of, oh, sorry, we can't go that night, we're washing our hair. And the king is like, Shampoo hasn't been invented yet. Try again. That's not how this works. And that's what they did. But that's at the best end of that. The best excuse that was given from that group was that. The worst one was that the mailman who was sent to give them the invite was killed. I mean, this is what the king was dealing with. And so the king's response then is to say, all right, hey, apparently you don't like being at this level. Well, I can take care of that. If you aren't going to hold up your end of things, I can take care of that, and then sends people out to destroy their homes. That seems like an overreaction on our part because none of us work in that kind of level, but that was understandable to the folks at that time. They would say, no, that's a perfectly logical response. Because there was an expectation that of what they needed to do that they weren't doing. King maybe still overreacting a little bit, but that is an understandable response. The same thing actually holds true for the other guy. He had been invited to go to this wedding. And he knew that he had been invited to a wedding banquet, to a wedding feast, to a wedding party. He knew what that was, and he knew what the expectation was, that even if he didn't have a lot of money, even if he didn't have really fancy clothes, even if he couldn't get something new, and maybe the jacket he was going to wear might be a little bit worn and frayed, the expectation was that he would at least make the attempt so it would show that he knew what he was doing. Instead, the dude shows up in the clothes that he worked in that day. And it wasn't like he had a nice white-collar job where he just took his suit jacket that he wore into the office that day and put that on and showed up in those clothes. No, he probably was a carpenter or a mason or did some sort of hard labor that, you don't come out smelling very good by the end of that day. You don't always wear the nicest of clothes to do that kind of job. That's what he did, and that's what he showed up in to go to this wedding party. The king looks at that and says, what, really? You're coming to this and you aren't even at making the attempt? It wasn't about the clothes he was wearing. It was that the man basically was just kind of thumbing his nose at the king. That he knew where he was going. He knew there was an expectation of him of what it was that he was going to do, and he didn't do it. The spam principle applies. They were expecting a whole lot for not much work on their part. And the king is saying, that's not how this works. You can even say that is kind of what Jesus is saying. And in fact, most of the time when we look at this parable, this is where we end up. This is where everything normally seems to drive in this story, that many people are invited, but few people are chosen. Now, I've got kind of an issue with that, though. Because what happens is when we do that, what we're setting up is that we're going to have a bunch of us, we're all going to be standing around God with our hands up in the air going, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me, God, I want you to pick me. And then what happens when we do that? We say, well, how do we make ourselves the most presentable in order to do that? So we begin to put together these lists of things that you've got to do or things you've got to have, or you get all this stuff and you put it together so that we look the most desirable. So we're standing there going, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. That God goes, hey, you've got everything together, I'm going to pick you. Now you know what human nature is, though, at that point, which is that, well, what is the least amount of all of this stuff we need to do so God still picks us and we're standing around going, pick me, pick me. What is it, what's the lowest common denominator? What is the least amount of work we need to do? We apply the spam principle. We want the payoff of being chosen by God, but what is the least amount of work we need to do in order for that to happen? That's what, if this becomes our focus, that's where we end up. But I think our focus, this is important, but it's not our main focus. Our main focus goes back to verse 9. And that is, therefore, go to the roads on the edge of town and invite everyone you find to the wedding party. The king sends his servants out and says, I don't care who they are, good or bad or whatever, invite them to come. The place for us to start is to know that we've been invited already. So us standing around going, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me, doesn't do us any good because God is looking down as I already did. You've already been chosen. You've already been invited. You don't need to kind of do everything, get everything, so that you've been invited already. I said us is, what is our response? What is God's expectation of us when we get to that party? Now here's the thing. There are two things that Jesus tells us throughout all of his ministry to do. You know, the two biggest commands that Jesus has, he says, love God and love one another. Those are the two big things. Those are it. Two things. He said, love God and love one another. That's it. That is his expectation of us. Now, that can still be a challenge, but that is something that we can do. But here's the thing, though. If Jesus meant for us to live as if these were rules for us to follow, to love God and love one another, he would have gone, all right, here are your set of rules you need to know to love God. Here are your set of rules that you need to know to love one another. And here's a set of rules that guide the interaction between these two things when they come together. Here's your rules you need. But Jesus doesn't give us rules like that. Jesus, remember, tells us stories. That's why we're spending this time talking about the parables. Because Jesus tells us stories. He doesn't want us to just follow rules. He says that's not the point. We've been invited to come to a wedding feast. His expectation of us is that we know how to enjoy that feast, to be a part of that feast, to show up and to know that it's there and that we're able to be a part of what he's doing. He said, not only to love God, love one another. That's how we do that. But that should become a part of who we are. Those aren't rules to follow. Those are ways of living. Those should be things that that naturally bubble up inside of us and out for others to see, that we are living our lives in such a way that we're able to enjoy and to be fully a part of this banquet, this party, this feast that God has prepared. That we aren't worried about, is God going to pick me? That we aren't worried about, am I doing all of the right things so that the Nigerian prince is really going to send me money this time? Even though he hasn't the last 100,000 times that I've responded to that email. But are we doing the things that naturally show that we get this, that we understand that we are naturally a part of this party that God has planned? That it just shows in everything that we do. Because here's what happens when we're able to do that. When we aren't worried about all of this other stuff, but when we are able to love God, we're able to love one another, and that is just a natural part of who we are, rather than closing us off and rather than worrying about all this stuff that kind of narrows our focus, the world in front of us opens up. Because now we're able to fully take part of what God is doing, of what God has prepared, and we're able to step into that in a way that we couldn't ever have done before, because we're able to fully be a part of that feast, of that banquet, and know truly that God has invited us, and not just invited us, but he has already chosen us to go and to be a part of that and to go forward. As we go into this next week, I invite you to do a couple of things. One, watch the Royals, because that's going to be fun. Or if you hear this loud scream coming from from around my house somewhere, know that either something really good has happened or something really bad has happened. And you can probably judge that on the pitch of the scream that's coming out of my mouth. But the other thing is to look and to see, ask yourself, how are we living this out? Are we worried about trying to keep everything together, making sure that when we're standing in front of God going, pick me, pick me, pick me, that God chooses us? Or are we living in such a way that we are enjoying, that we are fully entered into this party, this banquet, this feast, this gift that God gives, that he's invited us to come and to share in and to be a part of? We can do that. Others will come and see that, and they will be a part. They will begin to see the momentous nature of that invitation that God makes. Let us go and share that kind of story, that kind of parable, that kind of good news with the world around us that needs to hear it so badly. Let us go and do that in his name and this week and the weeks to come. Amen.